There we go. All right, so let me share the link here. That's the one part that I wish I can get quicker is when it actually goes live from the page. Being able to. That's the one part that I wish I can get. There we go.
Oh, I can actually view it.
That's what we typically do while we're live and we're talking about how we're doing it. Typically, we have ourselves in the background, so we can, if anyone sends us any messages, we can talk to them. Now it is going to be about a minute delay or so. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Okay.
So let's put that in there.
We all learning. We all growing.
George and Antoinette.
And where you guys are, you do tax liens?
Yeah, so it's tax liens here and then tax deeds in Illinois.
Ah, this is so awesome. Okay.
All right, in there. All right. Welcome back to another rendition of Where's George? So if you don't remember, I'm Eugene. We've got George, and then we've got another special guest. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Antoinette Apollon, aka Red Lotus Chick.
Red Lotus Chick.
Yeah, I got a lot of AKAs, aka Carefree Black Girl.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. So if you notice the title of our podcast today, so you know, George and I, we tend to talk about any and everything from money to relationships to politics and everything in between. So today we've got a lot of interest in some things that we've talked about, tax liens. And so, you know, unfortunately, some people think I just spend all day looking at TikTok at random women dancing around and cooking videos, but I don't.
That's only 90%. That's it.
And then I happened to stumble upon some tax deeds.
Yeah. So, you know, TikTok, I guess after so many videos, starts to understand the things you like. And so they'll show you content of things that you find interesting. So I find myself looking at a lot of people who talk about real estate and real estate investing. And so I so happened to come across Miss Antoinette, who does tax deed sales or tax lien purchasing in Florida. And so what really caught my eye is, so when we first started learning about this process a couple of years ago, all of the videos that I watched on YouTube were people from Florida. And so it was very difficult to understand kind of the nuances in Georgia and Illinois because Florida was a little bit different. And so here was an opportunity to talk to somebody who could give us a little bit of insight on kind of what they've got going on in Florida, how that works, how that process works for them. We can share kind of what we do here, and then the pros and cons of both, right? So a lot of people are really interested. How do I buy a house? How do I buy a house? And they want to go out there and I won't save I'll save some of this for the show, but you know, you'll see a lot of people at these auctions because everyone's excited about it. But what we found is 90% of people actually know what's going on. And so hopefully through this series that we'll go through that, you know, as people are watching and tuning in, that they'll be able to ask questions and really get some insight on what this means and what that looks like. And so we don't want to glamorize it in the sense that it's just, hey, you know what, it's just easy as 1, 2, 3, because there's some nuances that make it a little bit more challenging, especially in some of the areas that we deal with. So what we'll do is we'll give Antoinette the floor, kind of let her talk about what she's got going on and what she does, and we'll just ask some questions and we'll let it flow organically like that. Works for you?
That works for me. Perfect. Hi guys. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce myself again. My name is Antoinette Apollon. I am a full-time real estate investor and credit repair specialist. I also run a virtual call center. So just all around entrepreneur. I got into real estate investing, I want to say about 3-4 years ago now. My older brother, he does wholesaling and all kinds of real estate. And he's been doing real estate for rolling on 10, 12 plus years now. And he kept telling me, hey, you should get into real estate investing. You be great at it. You're smart, do it. And I was like, nah, you know, I'm doing my own thing at the time. I you know, think you know what you know. But anywho, so here I am years later, and I'm like, all right, let me try, real estate investing. And so I had been basically being mentored by him for about 3 years on wholesaling. So I was the one kind of doing the busy work and getting the charts and doing the cold calling and doing the mailing and running the comps and doing the numbers to find out, hey, is this a good deal? Just to get me kind of used to the process of wholesaling. So, but I wanted to, make a deal myself. And this time I'm around a lot of people who got a lot of big money. And I'm like, I don't exactly have that kind of money yet. However, I'm going to keep looking for a deal. And I was at a real estate meeting. We have a group called Flip Savage here. So group of investors, we get together and we talk about our deals and we talk about our experiences in investor life. So at a meeting, I heard another investor talk about how she finds some of her land deals in tax deeds. And it was just like ding, ding, ding in my head. And I was like, tax deeds? What are tax deeds? So I just went to Google. I went to Google and I was like, tax deed sales in Florida. And then it took me right to a website, which was realauction.com. And I look and they're like, register here for free. And I'm like, all right, cool, register. Let me see what's up. And my mind was blown because I was like, wait a minute, there is a whole list of properties here being auctioned off for pennies on the dollar. And I was just like, what? So I basically watched the auction for about a good 3 months before I actually made my first deal or purchased my first deal. And I was really nervous. And I asked my brother, I said, hey, what do you think about, tax deeds? And he was like, man, I don't really know about that. Like, and I don't want you to stray. You should just keep doing wholesaling. You're going to make a deal. And I was like, I don't know. I think I want to try this over here. So I finally, I was a bench player, but the whole time I was on the bench, I was like, put me in, coach. First time I got my hand on some money, I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing with this. And I went out and I bought my first property for $7,500. It was a vacant land property. Now, the reason why I went with land is because I understood that if I knew how to run the numbers for homes, the same thing is true for land. So you just have to find out the value of the land. And then you have to purchase the land for beneath market value, which is all basically real estate, wholesaling, tactics. So I won the auction for $7,500. And I was like, okay, I got this land. And now what? So we drive past it. It's a jungle. It's an absolute jungle. We have to get someone to mow it. There was someone who maybe at a point in time was like squatting on it. There's trash everywhere. We get it cleaned up. I paid someone, well, he quoted me $500, but I think once he got behind the bushes, he knew it was way more than $500 worth of work.
We're gonna need some more money.
I mean, I did tip him, but I could never get dude to do any more work for me ever.
Yeah.
He was done. So we cleared it off, and I bought a for sale sign, and I put it up on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm like, okay, well, let's try to sell this thing. And I ended up selling the property in 31 days for $22,000. And it was a seller finance deal. So the guy comes to me, he's like, hey, I live down the street and I'm looking for a spot to put, like my trailer and my shed and eventually build a home. Cool. He said, I got 10,000 down and I'll be able to pay it off in 2 years. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. So we meet up at the bank. We signed the paperwork. He pulls out $10,000 out of a Ziploc bag. I kid you not. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, I don't trust banks. I was like, okay. So, and he made his payments on time. And I want to say this year he hits me up. He's like, hey, this stimulus money, I got an extra stimulus check and I wasn't expecting it. So can I pay it off early? I was like, yes, absolutely. And he pays it all off. And so from that one deal, I was able to not only get the money back that I put into the deal, and then some, but then I was able to secure, like residual income for about 1.5 years during the height of the pandemic. Okay. So, and then from there, it was just rinse and repeat. I got the bug. Now I know I could do this for real, and I'm running. I'm running, rinsing and repeat. So that's a little bit about how I got into tax deed investing. And I primarily focus on land because, just being honest, it's an affordable price point for me.
Yeah.
So I think when people think about real estate investing, they think about, the fix and flips, the property brothers, the good bones, and I'm like, nah, you could do the same thing with land, and you get a great ROI. So yeah, that's my story.
Oh, perfect. So tell me this, what does that process look like? So we talk tax liens, tax deeds, and so you said you purchased tax deeds. What does that process look like for you there in Florida?
So I think Florida may be a little bit more advanced. As I'm speaking to other people in other states and just getting more familiar with the process, people are asking me questions like, where do you find that website? Like, how is that, like that? And I go to other states' websites and I realize, oh, they don't have it. First of all, I didn't even know that they held auctions in person at a point in time. So I was like, oh, you got to go to the place. So in Florida, there's a website called realauction.com, and they do tax deeds and foreclosures, and they pretty much handle like 80% of Florida's counties. Okay, there are some small counties that are not on that website, but for the most part, and actually I don't think Broward's on the website. Broward has its own tax deed website, so they want to be different, but for the most part you can find most of the counties there, and they offer the lists there where you can see the properties that are being auctioned, and they have like the links to like Zillow and to the property appraiser site. So everything's laid out for you nice and pretty. And if you go to the FAQs, they tell you, hey, you have to have this amount of money in the account by this time, and you can deposit it these ways, either by the counter, wire, or ACH transfer. So I literally just got in there. I read the website, I read everything. If I was confused, I called the county. And so I started putting money in the accounts, and in every auction that I'm interested in, I do my research on my properties, which is basically checking for liens and things of that nature. And I bid on them auction day. So for me, everything is online. The only thing that I have to do is, like, maybe when I'm researching a property, if I'm just not sure about where it is, I'll drive past the property. But at this point, I don't even really do that. I just use Google Earth or Google Maps.
Yeah.
And that can be a little tricky because, how it looks on Google Maps, like, it doesn't give a true representation of the people that live there. So I done bought some properties in some places that people would consider the ghetto. And I'm like, well, people still need a place to live in the ghetto. So, I've learned I just been learning on the job. So a day in the life of me when I'm going to the auction is me getting my coffee, and I have my 3 screens up. I have my public records search up. I have my zoning maps and my, other mapping things up. And then I have the auction site up.
Okay.
And I'm just
going at it.
Yeah, just going at it.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. So when you go out, you go through these auctions, you look at a property, you find something you want to buy. I mean, and so in Florida, do you own it outright, or do they? What happens after you hit that purchase button?
Okay, so in Florida, Florida is a hybrid state, so they do tax liens and tax deeds. I don't bother with the tax liens. I just want the tax deed. And once you win the bid in the auction, they send you your deed in the mail. Okay, so it's pretty quick most of the time. Usually like within 2 weeks, you'll have your deed. Sometimes it might take a little longer, but you can actually find online when they file the new deed, it'll say, hey, this property was sold a tax deed for this amount of money. So then you would know, hey, yeah, that's me. And it's in public records. So they give you the deed in hand.
Okay. And that's it. You just own it. That's yours. That's your baby. You can do whatever you want to do with it, right?
How long is that process? A month?
Not even a month. They mail it to you as soon as you pay. Like, so when you win the bid, you got to pay your balance. You got 24 hours for that. So you got to make sure that you pay it within that time frame, or you initiate a wire transfer or whatever, let it settle in their system, and then they mail you your deed. So it's like a week. So, and sometimes people are like, oh, you got this in tax deed. I don't know. Did you speak to the previous? They send out a lot of mail before they put these properties up for sale. So, yeah, once I get the deed, it's mine.
Eugene, we're in the wrong area.
Right. So, we were talking earlier, and so, some of the differences. So in Illinois, is where we buy tax deeds. And so the process is almost the same. Right now they're at they don't do it online, but because of COVID, they stopped having like in-person auctions. And so they do a silent auction. So we actually just submitted our bids today for, I don't know, what is it, 6 or 7 properties that we were looking at. And so you send in, essentially you fill out a form, you say, hey, I want to bid up to X amount, and you put
That's
in
so
a check.
Interesting.
And it's so, and I hate it because, at the end of the day, they're just going to set whoever's, you don't know who got what. You could overpay by something.
It's completely like to the advantage of the government.
Yeah,
for sure.
And if you know somebody, I can go slide somebody like, yo, man, I give you $1,000 and you make sure all of my bids win at this amount. That's how it works, right? So you don't know, there's no transparency at all at this process. And it's interesting because they use COVID as a means to say this is how we're going to do it. But I mean, we were just down there with a couple weeks ago, and I mean, we're at functions, no one's wearing a mask, everybody rolling around like ain't nothing going on, like it's business as usual, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, with that process, so it's the same deal, right? You get the deed, but for them, and one thing we kind of touched on earlier is so they actually clear all of the liens off. So if there's any liens, if there's anything that's owed on the property, the county takes care of that, and then they'll pay. Oh, no, I'm sorry, they won't pay for it. They'll let the lien holder know, hey, we're going to expunge your lien. Now you can come back and purchase the property at the auction if you choose, but outside of that, your lien is done.
So wait a minute, just so I can gain some clarity. If someone purchases the tax lien, right, the lien, which is usually when they do it before the deed, usually there's more than one lien holder, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the day of auction, when it's actually going up for the tax deed, how do they expunge it? Do they just set the minimum bid at what's all owed? I don't understand it.
So their minimum bid is $795 for everybody. It doesn't matter what's owed on the property. It can be 3. I think, was it 3 years, George, before it goes into tax? I think it's 3 years.
I think it is, yeah. But I mean, to get a little bit deeper into it, whenever anything goes through first off, the lien is set to a person, not a property or anything.
Yeah.
So basically and this should be universal. I don't know that it is, but it should be universal that if, hold on, my little boy just walked in. That if it's sold through the government should say, hey, this property no longer belongs to this person. And so all your, once you better get your money now, because once we sell it, it has no weight, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that day, everything goes to $795, and that's when they notify all of the creditors on that account. Say, hey, the property's been sold, ownership has changed. I'm sorry, but not sorry. They don't.
You can't collect on that lien anymore.
Yep. And so you have to now, before they actually, I think you have like a 45-day window. So say like the last property we bought, they certified, said everything was done, but you have a 45-day window where you can go and get an attorney to go through and look at, hey, make sure that there's no liens on the property. So that cost us what, $450, something around there. And so if they do find a lien, we just go back to the county and say, hey, our person found, this $200,000 lien from the water company, take care of that. They send a letter to the water company, say, hey, this lien is no longer active, and sorry, but not sorry. And it was sold for that.
That is kind of clutch, because in Florida, what happens is if your property is sold through tax deed, there are some liens that survive. So let's say the opening bid is, $1,300. So it's $1,300. That's just for the taxes. That doesn't include any other liens. Okay. So let's say there's a municipal code enforcement lien and it's for $1,000 getting, a $50 fine every day from 2019. Now it's ballooned, right?
Mhm.
So when that property goes to auction, the buyers will, they'll be bidding. So let's say they run it up to $3,000. Okay. So the property sells for $3,000. What'll happen is it'll pay off the the first, the back taxes, and then the overage will go towards the lien. But if that overage doesn't cover the lien, then the new owner is now responsible for paying off that lien if they want to completely clear the title and be able to get a warranty deed.
Wow. So you have to clear off the lien yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now, mind
can't-
you, the lien doesn't like I've actually had a lien come to me, like a pavement lien on a previous property, and they were like, "Hey, you're the new property owner. Here's your $4,000 lien." And I was like, "Wait a minute, this is from." I think it was like from 1980 something. I was like, no. And it had been accruing interest for for X amount of years. I was like, no, ma'am, I'm not paying this. And I was like, you haven't been paid all these years. I'm good. The only lien, the only lien that I'm worried about was the tax lien that I paid and I got the tax deed for. That's the only one I'm worried about. So what'll happen is if you don't clear the lien, you just can't close through title.
Okay.
So yeah.
And so with that being said, I mean, so you don't clear it, you can't get the title. So what does one do with it? So say I don't know what I'm doing. I go in there. Oh man, I can get a 7-acre plot of land for $8. Now what do? It's got a $200,000 lien on it. What are my next steps in Florida?
Okay, so now this is sauce. So anybody who catching this is getting some paid some paid info for free. But if there's a lien on the property, I just said you couldn't close through title. I didn't say you couldn't close.
Okay.
So that means you just won't be able to issue a warranty deed on it, but you can still sell a property through quitclaim and it will just still have that lien attached to it. So that means that the new owner will inherit that lien. However, for some people, they don't care about that.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. If they want the 7 acres and they plan on farming it and doing whatever and putting their mobile home up on there, that lien ain't stopping that.
Right. That $8 or whatever you about to make on it. Yeah. Plus a little lien money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can always also negotiate down your liens too. And sometimes they can just really be butts about it. Like I had one lady tell me like, no, she didn't see a financial need to reduce the lien. And I was like, well, this lien isn't mine. And I could also just not pay it. And then you could just be asking me to pay it. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't take the property. So it's just like, I think you want some money. Getting some money is better than getting no money. But she was like, no, she didn't see a financial lien. And I said, okay. And I didn't pay them.
That's fine with me. I mean, we we're gonna continue at a stalemate. Okay. That's interesting because it's a now when I tell you this process here in Georgia, you're gonna be like, what the shit? Like who in the hell would ever do this?
Well, when you tell her the process in Georgia and the process in Tennessee is the same. So I'd imagine more states are probably the way that we are opposed to not. Yeah. But
I feel like Chattanooga's though is at least it's set up a little bit different.
No,
not the structure of it, but just how they do their auctions.
I'm surprised that you guys have set prices for your properties. So every property is 700 and.
No, that's just an Illinois thing.
Yeah. So here in Georgia, it's whatever it's owed, whatever the taxes are owed is what it's
okay.
Starts at. Yep.
Yeah.
They go ahead, George.
No, I was gonna say the Illinois, or at least the area that we're in, which I mean, I don't know that it's overly popular, but it's more suburb of St. Louis, so it's mildly popular. It is a set starting price, which I think is $750. But obviously, you know, some property is going to warrant that, some property won't. And it is unique, in my opinion, to that whole area. But I mean, you're also talking about homes. I mean, you can viably buy a home for $750.
Yeah.
Now, it could be in this area that you're talking about that.
I'm in the hood.
Yeah, in the middle of the hood. Yeah, maybe in the middle of the hood, and could be burnt down, or could be a trap house, or and all sorts of things. So I think what we'll get into later is, you know, the prelims of starting this, right? Because you want to, especially if you're wanting to get in this, I'm all about research.
Yes.
And there are some things, because I mean, to your point, Google Earth, you know, I think the house that I have now still has the Google Earth picture of the guy that I bought the house from that had a pickup truck and something or the other, right? And I've had the house for almost probably 8 or 9 years now. And so it's important to go and see what these things look like and see what the neighborhood looks like and all things. I mean,
yeah, this is true. I have had some, I will say one of my current properties looks flat on the map, but it's actually not flat. And it's like a little bit beneath. They've dug it out a little bit, so it's proving to be a little difficult, because when Google drove by and took a picture of it, it was filled with water. Now that could have been after a hurricane or whatever. So now anytime someone just Googles the address, they're like, this is a retention pond. And I'm like, yes, but no. You know, so, and this was one of the ones I didn't drive by and see. And honestly, like, I'm like, a lot of these, like there are so many auctions really that it's very difficult for me to drive by and see every property that I'm looking. Like I just have to pull the trigger sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes that'll bite you in the ass.
Now I will say that's another reason why I kind of stick to land too, because I'm like, okay, so there are some things that, I mean, obviously there are a set amount of things that can happen with the land, right? So I'm like, no, I wouldn't do that with a home, because it's too many things that I would have to look for, and it's too many unknowns. So yeah.
So is that a property that you've held for a long time, or is it just kind of something that you have, or?
It's still within the 90 days.
Okay.
So ideally I like to do 90 days. But with these land deals, there's no real holding fee. You're not paying.
No. I'm not saying it on a fee basis, but I'm just saying, you know, that's capital that's tied up still. No?
Yeah. So it's moving a little slower, and it was actually under contract, but then fell out of contract only because the developer who was trying to build on it, he couldn't build a 2-story house. So that really was the issue. He wanted to build a 2-story house, and that particular area is only zoned for single story. So then it went back on the market. And that's another reason why it's taking a little longer, because actually as soon as I listed it, it went under contract like in 2 days.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and now it's getting a lot of you know, interest and stuff like that. And with the county, I had to get some things in writing from the county to just make sure that on my end, I can provide the next potential buyer with the information that they need to know. Hey, listen, this is what's going on with this particular area, but it has been cleared for development, that kind of thing. So, and that's on the research part, you know.
You know, it's funny. So we talk about, you know, doing your due diligence and learning the processes. So the last auction, not this past one before that, in Cobb County. So Cobb County does a really great job. And so Cobb County, Georgia is kind of like the hotbed of Atlanta. So you got Atlanta, which is Fulton, and then Fulton, and then you've got Cobb, which is where all of the suburban, you know, kind of soccer moms. That's where George lives, you know, all the rich folks.
That's where he lives.
All the rich folks move out to Cobb County. But it's so their auctions, each county does their auctions differently and how they set them up. But Cobb County, they actually show you they'll list the address, they'll list the parcel number, and kind of where the starting bid is. And so, as we talk about due diligence, go for it.
That's not a normal thing with your auctions, with the
Oh, no.
address and the parcel?
No. So Paulding County, where I just bought some, they give you a real estate ID number, and that's it. And so you have to go through, at the beginning of when they list it, they'll have, 1,000 properties on there. And so over the next 3 months, those get chewed away and people buy or pay their taxes off. And so you're essentially stuck with the day before having to look up each individual real property ID, and either you're gonna go drive them or you're not. Now Cobb County, they don't never have it. They'll start off with like 20, and like this last auction on Tuesday, I think they ended up with like 7.
Yeah,
they actually went out there. But people don't, they get into this game and not understanding kind of how that process looks. And so I mentioned the address part of it because this last auction, there was nothing but land deals on this particular one. But they listed an address because it was an empty lot. There was no associated address. So they either put 0 or they'll put the adjoining lot address or the property owner's address. But they also include the property ID number, which is what ties to that particular lot. And so here I was like, oh man, I'm going in and clean up. There's no houses. Generally, people don't want, especially in tax liens here, they don't want land deals unless you're talking 20, 30, 40 acres where you can, as a developer, go out and do something. And so I'm like, man, I'm going in and clean up, had a couple extra dollars in the bank, thought I was going to do some things, got outbidded on everything, literally everything. And so I had a couple of people approach me and they're like, hey, I seen you bidding on almost everything. What do you do? What's going on? And so I'm explaining, hey, these were all land, I'm looking at just trying to build up my portfolio. And we can talk about this in another series, but just talking about having something to go and borrow against, right? So having that in your portfolio to do that. And so I anywho had a guy pull up to me. He was like, yeah, I bought this one, ahead of you. I'm sorry. It was a great house. I said, but you didn't buy a house. He was like, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, I did. My friend does this all the time. He looked up the address. It was a great house. I said, no, the house was next door. You bought the land, the empty lot with the tree and the truck that's on it next to it. No, I didn't. So his wife is like, I told you to go look at it. I told you to go look at the property. I was like, no. I said, I was showing him the property ID and what all that looked like. And so him and his wife were not happy because I think he flew down here, from DC or something? I told y'all, George. This was something new to him. And so he was like, man, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna clean up. And he bought an empty lot with a tree on it for
so let me ask you a question. For $22,000?
$22,000, a quarter of an acre with a tree and a truck.
In Cobb County?
In Cobb County. He thought it was a house, but
he'll make his money back.
Well, I mean, potentially. So
yeah, potentially.
I guarantee you he'll make his money back.
If it's in the middle of houses, I think he should make his money back. Typically, a developer is willing to pay like up to 20% of the value of a home for just the land.
Well, let me just, so I think this goes back to even more research. You have to understand your area, right? So the thing about Cobb County in particular is it's very suburban, night-ish. You got a lot of lawyers, doctors. I think a couple of the folks that are doing like the daily news live out here and so on and so forth. And as long as it is semi-livable, it will be developed in some form or fashion. And so, the reason I say that he'll make his money back is an acre of land in Cobb County right now is $100,000.
I hope he fails. I hope he doesn't sell it and he can't. He just fails at life because I had that.
But I'm saying that's what it is. In Cobb County, it is $100,000 for an acre. So he can easily make $25,000.
That sounds like South Florida. When I'm telling people about the strategy that I use, they're always like, okay, can I do this in California? is there land left in California? Then
Right.
no, you
It's
need
not
to
desert.
yeah, you need to go outside. So I do have a question because these are tax liens that you're talking about.
Correct. Yeah.
So how do you get ownership of the property then?
Okay, so this is probably a good segue for Eugene to talk about the process, and then that'll clear up a lot of things.
Yeah.
So here in Georgia, you buy tax liens, right? So we talked about deeds, and that's actually the property, right? So tax liens here in Georgia buy you access to the property. So you don't actually own it. And so what happens is you have you buy. So I bought some land on October 5th. I have to pay taxes on it for the next year. But I don't own anything. I can't do anything with it for the next year. And so what the owners have up until that year notice to actually purchase it back from me.
For the amount you paid?
Plus 20%.
Okay.
So anything that I have in it, if I, so whatever I paid in back taxes, if whatever I pay in new taxes, they have to pay me that plus 20%.
Okay.
And so after a year, I can then go through the quick lien process or quick deed process or quiet deed process and slowly go through and foreclose. And so then that's when you go and foreclose on the property, let them know, hey, we're going to take your property, whatever the case may be. And then, and only then is when you actually own it. So it's about a 15-month process plus another, if you don't have a lawyer on retainer, $2,000 or $3,000 in fees and forms and everything else. So yeah, so you don't own anything. You can't put it in your portfolio. Only thing is you really owe, and a lot of people here is what they understand the process. That's what they're banking on, is that 20%.
Yeah. So with your foreclosure process, do you go through the courthouse system with that? It's just the regular judicial foreclosure process.
Yep.
Now, one of the questions that I got before, which I found was really interesting, is what happens if there is a mortgage foreclosure process happening on the property and you own a tax lien on the property? Like, how does that work?
So generally, here is, or not, I guess anywhere, but if you have most mortgage companies, if the taxes are delinquent, they'll pay the taxes to keep it from that happening. So what I've found is 99.999% of the properties here no longer have a mortgage.
Okay.
Everything's been paid off. Now there's other liens, you can have municipal liens for utilities. You can have, hey, I built you a shed and you didn't pay me for it. I'm gonna throw a lien on your property.
Yeah.
Those type things. But mostly the mortgage company will come out and they'll pay the taxes on it and then foreclose on your house and then sell it that way.
Okay. So
now,
I used to always wonder, because I was like, those two things don't happen at the same time. It's either in foreclosure for HOA, for mortgage, or for tax lien, not like all three.
It only makes sense for the mortgage company to pay it off or to pay the taxes part. Because if I come over and buy it for however much I'm going to pay for it, then it clears them.
Yeah.
They don't get that money back at all.
Yeah.
So,
but even during that foreclosure process, you still, if there's other liens, like you've got to take care of that.
Right.
So during the foreclosure process, if it has liens on it, you would be responsible for those liens.
Correct. Yeah. And so that's when
they would have to clear those. They would have to clear the liens that are on there.
Wait. So the government would have to clear the liens.
Not here in Georgia. They don't. You have to clear that. That's on you.
Oh, see, that's how it's different. It's different everywhere.
Yeah.
So so George, we're
both in Georgia. I thought I could have sworn that so tax liens outweigh all other liens. Let's put it like that. And so once again, it's tied to a person, not necessarily the property. And so once that person is no longer, because basically the lien is on the property in order to leverage the person. So if the person's not there.
In Florida, they say it runs with the land.
Okay.
So it's not like, yes, a person can have a personal lien, like an IRS lien, like the IRS will put a lien on that person and they may lien the property. But if there is some sort of like, again, like municipal, like demolition lien, like let's say your house was decrepit and they demolished it, that runs with the land. So that runs with the property, not just the owner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have, at least personally, when I'm looking at stuff, I've geared towards land opposed to houses, because the houses do come with liens, right? Sometimes they do. And so, but the land generally, unless it's a government entity or a county entity, no one puts liens on your land. They'll lien your, and I take that back, because there's instances where businesses or construction companies or builders buy plots of land, they get liens put against that. But your everyday Joe that has 3 acres behind the Dairy Queen, it's generally, if there's a house, there's a lien on it, but not on the actual land. And so it's a lot easier to kind of navigate through that.
Yeah.
Opposed to the actual
That's
house.
interesting. That's really interesting. You know what? These systems are very, very different. When you told me they don't give you the address, I'm like, wait a minute, they don't give you that address.
Well,
like they really make y'all work.
that's a Georgia thing, because, or I'm not gonna say it's a Georgia thing because I don't know all about every other state, but our counties manage each one of the auctions in their own way. And so that's so I mean, Cobb and Paulding touch, but Cobb County makes it easier for you to look at their things opposed to Paulding. And I think we look at Cherokee one time, and Cherokee, I want to say they almost give you pictures of the place.
Yeah, Cherokee, and I think Floyd County may. But yeah, it all depends on where you are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Paulding County, the one that just gives you that RO number, if you wanted addresses, they put the Friday before the auction, they publish it in the local newspaper. And they'll publish every address with the RO number. But you have to get you can't even look at it online. You got to get the physical newspaper to look at it. And I'm like, what kind of bullshit is that? Like, really? Like, I don't even know where to go buy a newspaper from. But
it's online, and they can charge you for buying the newspaper.
It's interesting because we talk about due diligence, but you get a lot. Like if you see the pictures I post from these auctions, there's a lot of people there. Right. And you've got people that I know who don't know what the hell they're doing. And that's not a knock at that. It's just more so, hey, you're going out there and saying, oh man, I can get this house for $1,000, but you don't know all of the work that goes on behind that, what that looks like, if there's any liens on it, if there's even a house on it. I've seen people buy the land that is in between 2 houses in a subdivision that they can't build on. They see the price point and they think, oh great, that sounds great. But there's a big ass hole in it, or there's a ditch that runs through it, or it's just a sign for the HOA that says, hey, you can't do anything, right? So people don't do their research. So you end up at some of these auctions and people are bidding up stuff and it sounds great, and they've got, they just got their tax money in, they got this $10,000 burning a hole in their pocket. And they're like, you know what, somebody on YouTube told them they can go buy a house for $8,000. So that's what they're going to go do.
Yeah.
And they're stuck now. Now you're stuck with a quarter of an acre between 2 houses that's got a ditch running through the middle of it.
Right.
Well, one time I bought a retention pond and it literally said retention pond in the legal description.
Oh gosh.
But the gag is it wasn't really a retention pond. So apparently when this land was platted, when this development was platted, they wanted to put a retention pond there, but no one ever put a retention pond there. So I was looking at all the maps and I had lost out on all the bids that I really wanted. So at this point, I'm like, well, let me just take a look at the other properties. Let me see if I missed something. Because sometimes there's so many properties that I'm just like, I'm not going through 98 properties. Let me just pick 10 and sit with those. So I had lost out on all of my other bids, and I look it up on the map and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not a retention pond. This is land. So while I'm waiting for it to come up, I call the county really quickly and I actually get someone. I say, hey, is this a buildable plot of land? And the guy said, yeah. And I said, yeah, but it says retention pond. He's like, I don't know why that thing's called a retention pond. That's absolutely incorrect. That's not a retention pond. We just did a rezoning. It's a buildable plot of land. I was like, can you send that to me in an email? He was like, of course I can. I said, okay. So he sends it to me in an email and the bid comes up. The land is $1,300. I put in a bid. No one else bids on it. Okay. Because on face value on the property appraiser site, it says this is wasteland. This is a retention pond. So, I buy it and in my heart, I win the bid, $1,300. And then my heart sinks because I'm like, I'm excited, but what if I just bought a retention pond? Like I'm scared. So I was like, well, we're going out to see this thing. Mind you, we didn't see it before we bought it. So we go out, we drive out. And I was like, no, this is land and it needs to be cleared. So it's like 0.37 acres sitting in between two nice 1 acre lots in a very affluent neighborhood. Okay. I'm talking about these houses are 400, 500,000 and up. So I'm like, geez, okay, this is a really nice neighborhood. I'm like, I'm scared because, So we get the land cleared and we do all of that stuff. Somebody called code violation because they were like, you're cutting down trees. I was like, these are weed trees. But you already know where I was. So, okay, I had to pay some extra little code violation fines, but I took care of it. And I put it up for sale and people were like, yeah, they want to buy it, but they were like, are you sure this is buildable? I'm like, yes, I have the paperwork. And, for lack of imagination, people are like, oh, I need a 1 acre plot. I was like, no, you don't actually. They're building entire 2-story homes on 0.15 acres of land. So 0.37 acres is a nice parcel. Okay. You're just looking at the other bigger lots. So finally a lady from the neighborhood comes by and she says, I really want to get this for my daughters. I live down the street. I want to be able to build them a house on it. I'll pay you the $28,000 cash today. Where can we meet? This lady was sending me money before she knew my last name. I was like, okay, and she bought it for $28,000. Now, when I did my numbers, I knew that this was a possibility because that's why I was like, yo, the land in this area is selling for like 20, like I had it at 35,000 at first. It's like it's selling for like 30 grand over here. So when I first put it up, I was like, okay, my real number is 28. My real number is 28. I'm gonna start off at 35. And I actually got it for 28,000 and my mind was absolutely blown. We paid $1,300 for that property. And so I was just like, man, I don't ever know if I'm gonna find another property like that.
Like, now sign it, make sure that check clear.
Listen, now I know whenever I see me a retention pond, I'm like, is there water in it though?
Is there really though?
Is there water in it? Because if it's not, they just be having parcels of land that they say they want to dedicate to certain things and then nothing ever happens. So I'm like, look at me. Can I build on it?
Can we do something with it?
Yes.
Oh man. So what's been one of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout this process as you've been kind of learning and going through it?
Well, you got to be persistent. You got to be persistent. Got to do your research. Okay. Because you don't want to get stuck. I've had those gut check moments where it's like, I just found out there's a $12,000 lien on this property. And I don't know what to do. Breathe. So I will say that you have to be resilient. Okay. Things are going to come your way. And sometimes people don't know how to answer your questions. Like you're talking to people in the county, they don't know any better than you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to have like a level of resiliency. You got to have a little bit of grit, like tenacity. You just got to be willing to take the chance and do it. And go out there and mess up. Because at the end of the day, like the biggest risk gets the biggest reward. So I'm not saying to, kind of like gamble with it. You're making strategic moves, but definitely got to have some resiliency, because you're going to get knocked down. You're going to have some gut punches. You're going to have some things that you just did not foresee. And I can't tell y'all how many days I done cried about a property just because I'm frustrated. Yeah. But I let my tears out, and then I'm like, now I can think straight, because when I'm upset, I can't think straight. So I just let the cry out. And then I'm like, okay, now what do I have to do? Who do I have to write a letter to? Who do I have to call? Who do I have to email? Do I have to start the process of getting this thing rezoned or whatever? Let's do it, because I don't have time to cry. I got to get my money back. So, so yeah, basically I'm like, well, the money is in the problem solving. So that's how I look at it.
What would you say? So if someone wanted to kind of, if you had to, I guess, give some advice to somebody, hey, you know what, I'm gonna start getting into this game. I'm gonna look into it. Where would you say they should start first?
Well, start with the county that's closest to them.
Okay.
That they are familiar with, and get really familiar with their systems. I feel like once you learn the systems and once you know what you're looking for in one county, then you can say, okay, well, I know in general these things apply, and I'll know what to look for in another county. So then everything won't be Greek, basically. So I started off in one county. Then I was like, okay, well, how do I know the zoning? And, the property appraiser doesn't tell me the zoning. Do I have to call for everything? Do I have to? So I got really familiar with that county site. Now, mind you, all of the county sites are different. But if you already know that you're looking for land use code, you're looking for, millage rate, you're looking for the GIS maps, then you're going to know, okay, once I go to the new site, this is what I'm looking for. And it's easier to navigate, because you can lose a lot of time in research. Research can be very time consuming, honestly. Mm-hmm. So start with one county, get familiar with the process. Once you get familiar with the process, then you can branch off into other counties.
Okay.
But don't just jump out there and just be like, oh, I want to hit this county, that county, because you're going to start messing up. I just had a situation where I was going to bid on a property, and it looked like it was going to be a good property, but I called the zoning department because I was in a totally new county and I had never been in this county before. And I said, hey, I just want to know, is this lot buildable? And the guy told me it can potentially be buildable if it was never owned by either one of its neighbors and it was split off illegally. And I was like, what? Well, that's an interesting stipulation. He said, yeah, that's how we do it in Volusia County. And I was like, good to know, because I've never heard that in any other county. So Don't ever get too comfortable. You can't ever ask enough questions. Ask the questions, because you rather ask the questions up front than to, figure out the hard way. I ended up not bidding on that property, and it sold for like $9,000. And whoever bought it, if it wasn't owned by the previous owners, then they got a great deal. But I just wasn't really willing to take that chance, because I couldn't find. Actually, the deed was so old in public records, they didn't have it online. And there was only like one ever occurrence with this land. And I said, you know what? It's okay. You don't have to get that one.
Sometimes. And that's the hard lesson for people. I mean, even me, even to try to say, you know what, I can let this one go. Mm-hmm. I don't have to buy everything. I don't have to stay for the whole auctions. Sometimes it's like, oh man, I can. There's so much going on. I can do this. I can do that. You get wrapped up into the whole. Oh shit, I can buy this. I can buy that.
It's the adrenaline too. You're
it is. Yeah. Yeah. Until you get around some old rich white guys and they got $1 million pockets. And
listen,
they look. There was one. This last auction, it was 27.7 acres. I was like, you know what? No one bids on land here. I got this. The auction went up to like 15,000. I was like, all right, cool, we're good. Guy comes in, he's just all quiet, 50,000, and I'm like, he just go from 15 to 50. Like that's a big ass jump.
Yeah.
And then this other old rich white guy, he went to 70. He went to 90. He went to 110. And I'm just like, well, damn, y'all made me look like I'm thinking I'm about to get a steal here. And y'all were just like, yeah, we're going to let them little Negroes play their little game and make them think like they about to have some fun. But we about to play some real ball here.
Listen, you do not know how many times I do my research on my my quarter acre lots. Okay. So I'm like, boom, I got my criteria. Okay. I want the lot that's in between the other two lots, or like the lot that's directly in front of a house that was just built. I want that lot. Right. So I'm doing my research and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in the, maybe like Sarasota County or something like that, Point Siena, so they're developing, they're kind of new. A lot of retirement homes are being built there. So I'm like, cool. All right. I know what I'm going to go up to. I do my max bid. I run my numbers. I got my comps ready. And then somebody comes in the bid and the bid opens up. So let's say the opening bid is $2,000. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm waiting for it to open up. And it's like a little timer there. So you just have like the list of properties and it'll count down, and then it, opens up and you see what the bid is. That thing will open up at 25 grand. And I'm like, why y'all slapping dominoes on the table like that?
He's like, fuck all the bullshit. We about to just go ahead and roll with it.
Bam,
Y'all stop playing. Let's just do it.
I'm like, y'all gonna do that for the next 4 too, because it's 4 other properties. It's like that. Just let me know, because don't get my hopes up.
I'm telling you, it slaps all the wind out of you. But you know what, though, for me, it's only motivation. It's like, all right, you know what? Bet one of these days I'm gonna get a point to where I can drop $1 million and don't have to think. Because like I said, back in here in Georgia, you drop $1 million today, you're not gonna see that money for at least a year, unless someone comes and redeems that tax lien from you. So you have to be in a position to where you can give up that amount of capital and know that I won't see it.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I ain't there yet. I'm gonna let you know that now.
No. I don't know about George, Moneybag, you over there in Cobb County. No. But some of us ain't in that position, No,
I ain't there yet, which is why people are like, are you gonna develop I'm flipping it.
Yeah.
We're gonna cut the grass and we're flipping it.
Right. That's it.
I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Florida is like it's within the top 3 states of new development. Anytime I sell something, it's 5 other people coming to me like, do you have any more? You got any more of that land? I'm going to get you some. I got you.
Yeah. Let me get your name and number.
Yeah.
That's how it is, though. I mean, so let me ask you this, with all of your auctions, now, they haven't always been online, right? Have they been in person, or is it since you've gotten into it, they've been online? Since
I've gotten into it, I've only ever done it online.
Okay.
Some of my mentees tell me they do the ones in person. I'm like, you on the in-person auctions? Like, that county got to be small.
Something I like about it. But with it not being in person, what do you do, like your networking and kind of meeting and greeting with folks, kind of doing the same thing you do?
Honestly, I haven't really been like networking like that. For me, my real estate group are the Flip Savage people. So like I network with them when I go to the real estate meetings, but I don't actually meet any other tax deed investors in person, which actually would be pretty cool, like so we can talk about things. But there's no like Florida's tax deed investors convention or anything like that. So, and literally just like from Instagram and TikTok, that's how I've been kind of bumping into people who are doing the same thing as me. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I do realize that it's not a lot of people that look like us that's doing this. So, yeah. And I think that was part of the niche that helped to grow my page on TikTok. Is like, I don't see a lot of women talking about it, and I definitely don't see a lot of Black women talking about it. And it's a few of us now. We kind of like, we follow each other, and it's like, okay, I that head nod. I see. Yeah. So but unfortunately, I don't get to talk to a lot of people about it, and this has been a really enlightening conversation, just knowing the differences that you guys have. And I keep telling people, like, it's very different in each county. So I don't know, Florida's just what they would say a bit more advanced. I wouldn't even say advanced, but I literally can do this from home. I don't have to leave. Only time I gotta leave is when I gotta wire some money through the bank, and my bank be giving me trouble about that. Oh, we can't give you this amount of money. My bank told me they don't have that amount of cash. I have to get a cashier's check. I was like, what you mean you don't have that amount of cash?
Aren't you a bank? What y'all?
Yeah, they don't carry cash like that in the bank anymore. Apparently, you're gonna get a cashier's check, which represents the amount of money the bank should have.
Yeah.
and then you can do it that way. And I was like, y'all so weird.
But that's a struggle here. Like you have to have, and you've got 2 hours. So after you win a bid, you've got 2 hours to come down with the cash or a cashier's check to pay for it. And like you don't get any wiggle room. You don't get any, like you got to come with it. And so they have a what they'll do is people who don't buy it or who bid and don't win it, or win it and don't pay for it, they re-auction, at least in Paulding at 2:00.
Okay.
Do it again. I think in Cobb County, you can go back at any time and go back and kind of purchase some things at whatever the minimum is. So
do they block you from the auction if you do that? If you walk
they
away
tell
from
you they will. They will, and I can't say if it's true or not. I don't know if they have the bandwidth. So like this last auction I went to, it had 78 people who registered, right? And are they going to go through and make sure anyone who registered that purchased something came back? Probably not. Now I think if you become a repeat offender and
they'll probably
continuously out there, I'm just gonna bid
I
stuff
remember your face, boy.
Exactly. Especially when you look like us, right? Because there's not a lot of that, and there's been times like even this last one, I would have like, man, I can throw $100,000 bid on there. I wouldn't have paid for it, but I was, my little just trying to be flexing in front of everybody else. Oh, he got it, like, knowing that the rich old white man was gonna overbid it. But I asked you about the networking because I find it, when we first started out, these auctions are chock full of people, but no one wants to talk to you, right? No one wants to kind of tell you their experiences. No one wants to really, it's like they hold on to this.
They're like, it's my strategy.
It's unique, but I would go to people who look like me and I'm just asking questions, right? I'm inquisitive. I'm trying to figure out what all this means. Yes, I've seen 1,000 YouTube videos, but I've never actually done it. So, I don't want you to tell me, how you do it, but what does this mean? What does that look like? And it just it's people who just, they keep it real kind of close to the vest. And so, I like our platform. And then, obviously we're going to do this again because we want to make sure that, I have no problem sharing anything that I learn. You find a way to monetize it, which is even better.
This is fun. Yeah, this was definitely fun. And, with me, I tend to overshare. I'm not gonna lie. And the only reason why I charge for the classes is because obviously that's my time. And not to mention, it takes me a lot to research the things, to put it together in a teachable kind of format. Like that takes me time. Yeah. So
and that's why I was like, willing to pay for it.
I was like, that's why like my goal is for them to be able to literally hit the ground running. Now, after the conversation with you guys, I'm definitely like, you know what? I'm definitely going to be adding some more things to the next course because I'm doing another live class on the 27th. And then I just released an on-demand class playback, which is basically like my last class. A bunch of people will be like, hey, I missed it. I'm like, okay, well, you can catch the playback. You watch the 2-hour video. You watch it in your own time. It's priced less than the live class, obviously, because it's a playback. So
damn, George, we gotta step our game up, man. Just give it a game.
Do you, boo?
Write a book and some pamphlets.
Well, you know what? People love books. They were just asking me for all kind of stuff. Now they're like, "Where's your YouTube channel?" And I'm like, "It's coming." But I see some people that are out there and they're really just like super packaged well, and it's just another form of income. And I didn't really want to get into the space of like, oh yeah, I'm teaching this, I want to sell you a course. However, I do like to help people. And if I'm going to be helping you in putting together these products, and I got to incur costs because these websites and stuff, they're not free, baby. So then I'm like, okay, well, if y'all going to push me into the space, I'll make sure that number one, the product that I'm delivering for you guys is going to be the best product that I can give you. And I'm going to be giving you value for your money. Not to mention my product is priced way lower than a lot of the people. Like when I researched, I was like, dang, I really need to charge more. Like I really need to charge more, but I'm going to just keep it at where it's at. And I'm just happy to help people that really want to get help. And a lot of my students who invested with me, they have already either been to auctions. Some people who didn't even like they didn't buy the class. They just watch all my lives and they're like, hey, I went to an auction today. They'll come back and tell me like, I went to an auction today. You encouraged me to, go check it out. So, and I'm like, you know what, at the end of the day, if I could touch one person, and that's awesome. If I can help you break a generational curse, like I've done well. Okay.
And that's all it comes down to, because, and we'll post all of your stuff, obviously, but, so George and I, that's a different niche for us. I'm not about to go and create pamphlets and listen, I'm gonna give you the real nigga talk about it, and I'm gonna tell you how I feel and what I've learned. And if you want to go out and do it, fine, but don't be sitting there. Oh, Eugene said all I got to do is X, Y, and Z.
I ain't
now I
tell you
mortgage
that,
my house, and I bought
Mhm.
this piece of land that's got a swamp in it. Like, hey,
Right.
I ain't tell you that,
that
yeah,
ain't
I
me.
get you. I get you. It's a lot of responsibility, but
It is.
I really do try, and I'm trying to get into other states and stuff like that. And I don't say like it's for everyone. I'm like, this is for Florida specifically. However, the things that are the same are, if your state sells tax deeds, you can go to their website and read when they're having the tax deeds. And typically you can research the property on their public records, because it's public records. You may have to go to the courthouse. Like, those things are the same. And a lot of people will still say, but how? You need to pick up the phone. You need to go to Google. Because literally, I'll just Google. One lady, she was like, but wait a minute. She was actually in Georgia. And she said, wait a minute. But, she was asking me, she said, is this something just for Florida? And so I went right to I just picked a Georgia county site. And it wasn't either one of yours. And I was like, wait, this county right here? And so I was like, look, it says tax deed auctions right here. She said, how did you find that? I said, because I know what I'm looking for. You can literally go on the site and then use the search bar and then type in what you're looking for. But I think that has to do with people that are used to doing research. Like, we know how to research, and that's a skill in itself.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's something, it takes time and effort. People see how easy it is. And even with, let's see, I don't want to get too much into it. We're almost at time here, but, even when it comes to like wholesaling, a lot of people want to get into that space, and they see the commercials. Oh, I can make $10,000 and not use my own money. Yeah, but it takes, some time and some finessing and understanding how that works.
They see that list and they be like, nah, it's too much. I gotta skip trace these. That means I gotta,
It's not as easy as, what they put it out there to be, but it's what I found is very, very few avenues to make income that's going to be easy. That's not going to take some time and effort and attention, and really attention to detail. And so it's important to, one, grow your network and understand those people around you who are in this space and can teach you, and you got to invest in yourself, buying classes from you and other folks who are out there doing it. Hey, you know what? Here's an investment in myself. I'm willing to go and purchase Starbucks every day, but am I willing to go and purchase this class and really help me, guide me through breaking this generational curse of having some generational wealth and understanding how the just basic financial literacy, and so it's a great space to be. So
it is.
You got anything you want to add, George? You've been quiet, man. You looking
I'm
all fresh and clean over there. Like you just...
First off, I'm sorry that I'm so quiet. I've got children and I'm tired.
Listen, when you were sitting there doing that rocking, I said, I know that Lien.
That's why I've been drinking my little Coke here, getting my caffeine in. But no, this is a good conversation, right? Yeah. And you all put a lot of different things in perspective. And the biggest thing that I hope all of our listeners understand is that it's out there. Like, you can go out and do this stuff, but it is going to take that. I think you brought it up a little bit earlier. It's going to take that leap of faith. You're gonna bump your head. You're going to bruise a couple knees, but it'll be all right, because you're just going to keep learning and understanding how not to do that the next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you all both hit it on the head. I knew nothing about tax auctions and tax liens and all these other things until like my grandfather had been doing it, but we just didn't know until someone said, hey, how did you go about doing X, Y, and Z? And so he kind of put us up on the game, and that's where when I brought it up to, because I don't know, did you know about it before I told you, Eugene?
I had no clue. I think I've probably seen something on YouTube and like, yeah, that looks interesting.
Right. And so, you know, and I think if we decide to come back and do this again, I hope we do it again, we can talk about kind of the after a bit. Because like my grandfather's goal was to find places that were close and find places that he can put on Section 8. So he was making sure, you know, his strategy was, I'm gonna buy homes that were rental worthy and Section 8 them, and I'm gonna make my money regardless, whoever gets in, you know, opposed to someone who may be there that's actually looking to buy a home, or someone who's like you that wants to buy something that's going to flip quick. You know, all these different strategies that people have. And I think when we have conversations like this, hopefully people kind of get creative and think about it.
Yeah, really just open up
right
a new thought process. Like for me, it only took me hearing about someone else doing it. And I was like, wait a minute. And I just kind of like followed the yellow brick road. I just let my thoughts lead me. But it was never something that I had considered before, you know. And my older brother always tells me there's not a shortage of money, there's a shortage of creativity. And to me, this is like the most creative thing that I could do in the real estate world. Like, you buy land and then sell it for, like, you sell it for market price. Whenever I tell someone, even seasoned real estate people, like, yeah, I bought a plot of land and, you know, I did this, and they're like, you're really doing something different. And mind you, it's the same, you know, concept. You're just doing it differently. So they're really looking at me like I got 3 eyeballs. And I was like, no, but why can't you do it like that? Like,
right.
Yeah. So
I will tell you, white people have been doing it for forever.
Yeah.
So don't say you can't do it, because there are people, like Eugene said. I mean, the last auction, and if we ever get into these again, I'll tell you about the Asian guy. I always say it's the Asian guy there, because there was this guy at one of these auctions, and he was just, I mean, he bought a couple of properties, 100K plus, and was just going up, writing checks, getting back in line. And I was like, okay, this guy must be doing it. And
like, I want to be like you when I grow up.
They understand. Know that you're gonna have to sit on it for a year.
Yeah, but see, I think they understand the basics of one, you know, and this is a whole different conversation, but basics of, you know, financial literacy amongst their community, and then pooling resources. And that's just something that we as Black people tend to not understand, that concept. And that's definitely with something we can, if you're down to have that conversation, we can definitely have that again.
We can definitely have that conversation, because that's something that we talk about. And I actually have, like, I think I touched on it a little bit with you, like how my grandfather was one of the main developers of Overtown in Miami when it was on the come up. That was the place where the Black entertainers would be, because they couldn't stay in, you know, so it was always in my blood. But definitely moving forward, we definitely want to keep that in the family and move differently, so that we're just in conversation.
I'm with it.
Next time we're going to your house.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll go to your channel.
Oh yeah.
You know what? When I figure out how to make my Zoom go to the Facebook, I need the Zoom to go to the Facebook to go to the live. When I figure that out, I'll invite you guys.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. We definitely appreciate you taking time to talk to us. George over there looking fresh and clean. So, you know, hopefully next time I have my up for our conversation. But appreciate the time. Like I said, Will, if you send me your information for your classes, I'll definitely post that to our page and get that out to our folks, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sharing this video with all the people who on my TikTok. Y'all want to know about tax liens? Come on and watch this video.
Hey, we appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's what we gonna do. All right, guys. Have a great night.
Appreciate it. You have a great one.
Bye.
All right, I gotta stop this, man.